Hey Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today, we're going to discuss the Eagles' 22-21 win over the Giants, discuss the offensive line and injury issues surrounding the entire depth chart, and where the Eagles go from here. Chris, how you doing tonight? Or today? It's one of those things where we could have just re-recorded this, but I think we should just go with it. It was one of those nights where now it feels like a week later. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How you
everything
doing,
just
Chris?
goes all together. It just blends in, and you're just kind of like, okay, there's light out. Maybe there's not light out, and yeah, it's that way. I feel you on that, man. It's going not too bad, you know. It was another close Eagles Giants game that happened again, and who knew it wasn't the Meadowlands, it wasn't a miracle there, but it was a miracle at the link, I guess you could say it is the way they played. But we'll get into that. How about you?
I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. It was a fun game to look. Say what you want about the Eagles and whatever, but as an objective reporter, games like this are fun to cover because everything's going which way. The narrative's crazy. Everything's changing a mile a minute. Now, it's not fun to change your copy continuously over the span of 5 minutes, but I will say, I'm going to give you some insight into my brilliance, actually. I've got a secret. So let's go back to the game-winning touchdown throw from Carson Wentz to Boston Scott. It was 1st and 18. Well, that followed a face mask penalty by Jason Kelce. And I said in the press box, they are better off with this 1st and 18 with 40 seconds left than they were second and 3 at that point, because it seemed like whenever the Eagles got into short yardage situations, they were faltering. Immediately, Carson Wentz goes to Boston Scott for a touchdown. The same thing happened with Jason Kroom. When I joked last week, I said, Jason Kroom in there, game changer. And what does he do in his one play? He scores a touchdown. So I'm feeling good. I might go buy a lotto ticket. So there's that. But Chris, let's get into this game, okay? Because it was a mess. This was not like, if you're an Eagles or Giants fan, you don't feel good about either team after this one. But I think when you talk about the way that Carson Wentz, handled his business in the fourth quarter and actually closed this time, I think you can come away feeling a little bit more comfortable with him as not only the franchise quarterback, but the franchise leader moving forward.
I don't know what it is about him in the fourth quarter and him in these late drives that come out there. I mean, I know some quarterbacks have that it gene when it comes to a pressure situation. It seems like he has it. You just wish that he had it for the first 3 quarters, because to start out that game, he was looking sharp. He was finding Deshaun Jackson. He was spreading the ball around. His accuracy was on point. And then it's like as the game continued on, it just fizzled away. He started missing receivers high and wide, and he made 2 terrible decisions. I mean, it looked like rookie Carson Wentz trying to go ahead, throwing across his body, trying to hit a guy on the other side of the field and almost picked off. And then he had that horrible interception toward the end of the second half that cost him points, where he should have just thrown the ball out the back of the end zone trying to hit John Hightower. So it's like he kind of sheds off. He has a short memory on that stuff, and he sheds off all that bad stuff. And it seems like he finds a way for his team to win somehow in the fourth quarter. It can be extremely frustrating, but then you see what he can do late. You're like, why can't this guy do it the whole entire game? It really, really is rough. I mean, what was your take on Wentz's performance yesterday?
Well, I think with hero ball, which Carson Wentz is clearly a believer in, you take the good and the bad, right? At times he'll, force the ball and throw an interception like he did, like you mentioned. And then in the fourth quarter, he'll put on a cape and lead back-to-back touchdown scoring drives. to win the game. I thought the play calling in this game was atrocious after the initial series. I thought Doug Peterson had one of the worst game managing performances of his career. And Carson Wentz kind of bailed him out. Now, I think the play calling got a little bit better as time went on, but you saw those two failed 2-point conversions. I don't know what's going on there, but there does seem to kind of be a disconnect between Wentz and Peterson when it comes to short yardage plays. And it's something that they really need to kind of work on here. Both those 2-point conversions kind of look like they were dead from the jump, or the snap, if you will. And I think that's something that when they head into the bye week, it's something they're really going to have to self-evaluate and work on. I thought Wentz played one of his better games. I think when we look at this team as a group, they're not good. This is not a good team. But I think what's interesting, and Wentz is kind of like the poster child for this, there's so much fight left in them. There's no quit in them. And I think that's the positive to take away from this game, especially with Carson Wentz's performance. From there, let's shift over to the Boston TD party. Now, I've covered all 3 games between Boston Scott and the team he kills regularly. Boston Scott has 6 career touchdowns. 5 of them have come against the Giants. The Eagles are 4-0 when he scores a touchdown in a game. On Thursday night, he scored his first receiving touchdown of his career. Go figure. With 40 seconds left in the game to win the game. Look, he had a good night on paper. Especially that in the fourth quarter, he finished with 92 total yards. What did you take away from Boston Scott's performance in this one?
Well, I think what the Eagles did early on, it was nice. They tried to use them in space especially when they were using them in the up tempo, and really trying to put pressure on that Giants defense. They made sure they actually ran a sprint draw. I thought it was actually the draw play, and it ran really well because they had been throwing the ball so many times. So I thought that when they were using him in those situations, I thought it was good. I mean, listen, when he wasn't the first op on that touchdown, the game-winning touchdown pass, he wasn't the first option. He did the right thing. We talked about this before when it came to the receivers and their pass blocking. I mean, a lot of times they didn't even leak out because they were having issues in the backfield trying to protect. And the fact that he was able to recognize that he was able to go ahead and go out in the shooter flat and go ahead and beat Jabril Peppers on that play, and not only have the wherewithal to make sure you caught the ball, but make sure you landed inbounds and inside the pylon for a touchdown. I mean, that was just great. It's something I don't know what he has. I don't know what it is he has for the Giants and his production against them, but it was crazy to see that he continues to do this over and over again.
Yeah, we got to see Jason Huntley too, some Corey Clement. They had positive rushing moments. I think another guy that we really need to praise in this game is Richard Rodgers. He had 6 catches for 85 yards. He came up huge in the fourth quarter. Listen, he had a better production game than Zach Ertz has had all year. And with Dallas Goedert kind of on the mend, expected to be back after the bye week, I think the Eagles will be in good shape, even with Zach Ertz sideline. How do you feel about the tight end position moving forward?
I think they're dynamic, and especially I think when you have Ertz and when you have Goddard coming back, you'll go ahead and you have add Rodgers to that trio. I think that you'll go ahead and you'll be able to go ahead and solve some of these short yardage and goal line situations. Because when you throw out those 3 and you throw out another receiver, say Fulgham out there, to go ahead and when it comes to that, you have 3 big athletic receivers that can go ahead and control the middle of the field, and now also the outside where you don't have to throw Hakeem Butler out there on a fade route, even though he wasn't interfered with. But that's a whole other story. But you can go ahead and you can have a lot of options out there, especially when it comes to those tight quarters, and you go ahead and make those tough plays when it comes to there. So I think it's a good situation to have when it comes to these wide receivers. The question I want to ask is, do you feel as if this is an indictment on Zach Ertz that Rodgers was able to have such a good game, given that, Ertz, we've spoken about Ertz's struggles earlier on. Do you think it's an indictment on Ertz that he hasn't been able to have a game like this so far this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can draw that conclusion. I mean, look, Carson Wentz hasn't had trouble throwing to Dallas Goedert when he was healthy. He didn't have trouble throwing to Richard Rodgers. Hey, Jason Kroom caught his one pass that he was targeted on. Yeah, I don't think it's a great look for Zach Ertz. That said, I do think it's in everybody's best interest for Zach Ertz to come back, ball out in the last month of the season if they're in a playoff push, increase his value on the trade market because they can't trade him now that he's on injured reserve as a short-term injured reserve guy. So, um, look, this is going to be it for Zach Ertz. This is it. I mean, look, I know that there's some wiggle room. Maybe he catches 40 passes once he comes back. I just think this is coming to a close, but they need to close the right way for the benefit of everyone, especially for Zach Ertz, who wants a contract extension and a raise within the top five players at his position. He's going to need to ball out. It's in his best interest to ball out. That's why I never really bought the, hey, I want to get out of here, hey, I want to get traded sort of thing. It's not in his best interest to do that, because the Eagles inevitably are going to take care of themselves, and they would field the best offer for them, not for him. And that could, in turn, screw up his ability to make more money. It could screw up his ability for his role moving forward. Like, the grass isn't always greener, so to force yourself out after the legacy you've created in Philadelphia, I just don't buy that. So you brought up Fulgham. He kind of prove that he's human in this game. There were a couple of drops. There was a couple of misconnections with Carson Wentz. Overall, he finished with 5 receptions for 73 yards. He's legit their number one wide receiver. Like, it's without question now. He is an X receiver. He's going to be their X receiver moving forward. I'm to the point where, we saw Deshaun Jackson get injured on a late hit, and he's got a high ankle sprain. I'm at the point where I don't even bring Alshon Jeffery back, because who needs to be your guy. He played roughly 96% of the snaps yesterday. Fulgham's just a really good player. He's an incredible find. And then you look at what John Hightower was able to do, that 59-yard catch. He's getting some confidence. I know he had the tracking issues that we brought up ad nauseum in recent weeks, but man, what an impressive play. And then Greg Ward, who I've been critical of, also had some clutch plays. Where are you at wide receiver right now?
I mean, that's where I disagree. I think you do need Jeffrey back, especially you're paying him this much money so far this season. And we've seen that you need a receiver that can go ahead with a catch radius like Jeffrey has and in tight coverage besides Fulgham, because if teams are going to eventually get tape on them and they're going to go ahead and start adjusting, we've already seen different defenses go ahead and start even like respect them to the point where they may shade a safety over them for a little bit or put their best cornerback on them one-on-one. So you're going to need another receiver on the opposite side. And Deshaun Jackson would have been that receiver, but now we don't know how it could be up to 8 weeks, possibly. We don't know when it comes to that ankle. So you need another receiver that's going to be able to go ahead and fight for those tough contested balls that, especially when we know Wentz's inaccuracies at times, you're going to need somebody to go ahead and take that mantle opposite of Fulgham. And I just think you're going to need Jeffrey at some point this season, especially with the schedule coming up. I mean, you're going to have, are you going to feel comfortable? Well, not, are you going to feel comfortable with basically rolling with this crew, especially late in the season, if they're still somewhat contending for this division? Are you going to feel comfortable with the crew that you currently have constructed right now without Alshon Jeffery and without Deshaun Jackson? Do you feel comfortable like that way?
I would absolutely rather contend and grow with young players and come up short than force a guy out there who is slow, who is plodding, who has not been necessarily the greatest teammate, who is only here because Howie Roseman made one of the worst unforced errors I've ever seen a GM make in guaranteeing his contract for this thing. He is not the guy that he was 3 years ago. He's definitely not the guy that he was in Chicago in year 2 and year 3. I just don't see the benefit. All you're doing is taking away playing time from guys who are hungry and making plays. Look, JJ Arcega-Whiteside even made a really nice catch for a first down in the red zone yesterday. Like, you've invested in JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You're finally getting him involved. He's blocked really, really well. I just don't really, I get it from a talent perspective in theory, but frankly, if I were them, cut your losses, try to trade him for whatever you possibly can. I've heard that the Green Bay Packers are looking into wide receivers. There are teams out there that are trying to get playmakers. I would even swap him for I would even take on the cap hit. I would take it. I would take on.
Ooh,
You're going to do it anyway, Chris. You're going to do. That's how the cap works. You're taking it anyway. You're paying for him anyway. This is what it is. It is what it is. You guaranteed him $10 million. That is what it is. That's done. It's over with. Now you can't look at him as that money anymore. You can't look at him as the guy who caught touchdown passes in the Super Bowl. You can't do that. You have to.
And what are you going to get back for that? What are you going to get back for?
Who cares?
You're going to need something for this.
Why? He hasn't played in 7 weeks. He hasn't played in 7 weeks, Chris.
But you want a 7th round draft pick for Alshon Jeffery and a guy who rosters management with it. We see what's going to happen. What happened with 7th round draft picks on that one, and still take that cap hit.
I want Alshon Jeffery off this team. If I'm Howie Roseman, it does not make sense to play him at this point. The division's gross. Them winning the division, I don't even know if it. Look, you want to win the division. It's healthy for Roseman, but I don't really see how much Jeffery kind of brings to this team. And frankly, after covering this team for 3 years, I'm not sure he's the best fit for Carson Wentz as a passer to begin with. So, to me, at some point, you've got to cut your losses. He suffered a calf injury this week. That's why he didn't play after missing all of this time with a foot injury. He also hasn't played in 10 months. So, what are you expecting from him? I mean, they just put him back with the scout team 2 weeks ago. I mean, this has been an error of errors. And at some point, you need to decide, hey, is it worth playing a veteran who was a malcontent previously, who did not necessarily, who's been banged up all the time? Look, Deshaun Jackson, they put him back out there. He gets injured. You can't blame him for this injury. It was a late hit. The DB for the Giants should absolutely be fined. It was ridiculous. But to me, play the kids. You're winning with the kids. That, Chris, that's my thing. You're winning with these kids. They're winning with they're doing some progressive stuff with their their third right tackle, their fourth right guard, their third or fourth left guard. They're making progress. And frankly, that's good for them in the long run. They have to get cheaper. They have to get younger. Alshon Jeffery will not be here next season. So you're saying that you want to keep Alshon Jeffery around to take reps away from Fulgham, to take reps away from J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, to take reps away from Quez Watkins, to take reps away from Greg Ward, to take reps away from even Hakeem Butler, when even if they win the division, they're basically paper tigers. And I get it. If you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. But logistically, Carson Wentz is flowing with these no-name wide receivers, these no-name tight ends, these no-name running backs. What's the point?
Well, at the same time, what message are you sending to your younger guys saying, hey, you know what, we're going to go ahead and have to get rid of the guys, so let's go ahead and just mail it, in essence, kind of mail it in.
It's saying you have faith in those young players. It's saying you've earned your spots here. We're not going to mitigate your potential or your progress by putting in a guy who's been out for 7 or 8 weeks, who cannot stay healthy, I'm only passionate about this because I see the progress that these wide receivers are making. Why negate their potential growth? John Hightower's playing serious minutes. Jalen Reagor's coming back. Travis Fulgham looks like a legit star. Why negate what the future is for the present when you know the division is not that good? We've seen reports from Jay Glazer from Fox Sports where Howie Roseman might want to be a seller in this whole thing, even when they're contending. They have to eventually realize, you talk about their cap hits. Next year, they're not going to be players in free agency, so they need to see what they have in these current young guys. For several years, they negated the progress of guys like Rasul Douglas and Sidney Jones and all these guys. They need to get return on these investments. And frankly, Alshon Jeffery is a sunk cost whether they make the playoffs or not. It was just dumb decision to keep him on the active roster. That's clearly been a mistake. And now if you put Alshon Jeffery out there, he plays 3 games, gets injured again. You've negated 3 games where other guys could have stepped up and progressed. That's my point to you.
I, this is actually fun to disagree on something with you. This is actually pretty nice. I just think that you have to go. You just have. I just think you're sending a really bad. Even if you say it's a sunken cost with Jeffrey, he's in there. Why not get the most out of the guy when he comes back? I really think he's ready to come back in about a couple weeks. And I think
In a
after the
couple
bye
of
week,
weeks?
after the bye week, and then
Okay,
after
cool.
with the,
Okay, so
okay,
so
we're going
you're
this.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're saying that like in a couple of weeks. So they've not only wasted this roster spot for 7 weeks already, they're going to waste a roster spot for like 9 weeks and then bring this guy back where he's only really effective if he's catching a lot of passes and he's used in the red zone.
Well,
Like
I
to
think
me,
the roster management part, I agree with you when it comes to that roster management part. I think Howie Roseman mismanaged the roster and he should have been on a pup list. But the fact that when you have him coming up with the schedule, you have coming up with Cleveland, Seattle, you'll have to see the Cowboys again. I think I'd rather have him out on the field to go and facing him, a healthy Alshon Jeffery facing him, than having him just sit around there doing nothing on there. And if you trade him for it, you're still going to take the cap hit and you're going to get like a 7th round pick that we probably know that's probably going to be cut or is going to be a bad draft pick or somebody who's not going to really contribute. If you look at the
but
history of this team, I just rather have him on the field and see what you can get for the remainder of the season instead of just wait and then see what you can get after, or just release him or see if you can get a pick later on. I just think that's the better way to go at this point.
to me, he's a sunk cost. Anyway, this is supposed to be a recap show. Sorry. So, according to Ian Rappaport, Lane Johnson suffered a grade 1 MCL sprain last night. They expected it essentially. He shouldn't miss much time. That's good news. As I first reported on Eagles Extra this morning, middle linebacker TJ Edwards is healthy and ready to return. He'll be eligible to return next week in time for the Cowboys game. That's good news. As we move over to let's actually talk about the offensive line a little bit. So last night, Jason Kelce played pretty well. He did have that face mask penalty, but that was kind of like a freak mistake. Lane Johnson played well before he got injured. Everybody else, not so much. Nate Herbig was a terrible pass blocker. Jordan Mailata came back down to earth. Suo Opeta had a terrible debut after a really good first series. Where are you at with the offensive line? And actually, how impressive is this that Jeff Stoutland somehow managing to look, this was their 6th different offensive line group in 7 games.
I still trying to figure out how he's able to go ahead and at least get these guys up to speed on how to doing this. When you starting to really dip into practice squad guys now going out there on nationally televised games as your starting lineman, I think he's done a good job. But I think given if they don't have Jack Driscoll coming back from this ankle injury coming back, if they don't have a way to go ahead and solve this rotating guard problem when it has to see who's playing right and left, I think it's going to be a major issue coming up. I mean, Herbig's done a good job, but also he's gotten used. He started getting used to the left side. Then you switch him back at the last second on a short week to go back to the right side. I mean, that's a tough transition for a guard to make because you have all those different rules that you go around, and not to mention that when it comes to your mechanics, you're going learning. Your body gets used to doing everything from one side, then you have to shift back over to another side. So I think I'm not worried about Herbig. Mailata, he definitely, as you said, he definitely did come back down to earth. It wasn't his best game. It wasn't on the tier we've seen him do the last couple of weeks, and it could be a factor that some of these defensive linemen have gotten tape on him now and starting to do a little counters of their own and going to attack him. So this is where he's going to have to go ahead and readjust once again. But this offensive line, I'm worried about it. I mean, Kelce had that face mask penalty, but besides that, he did a good job. This Lane Johnson is almost at the point where you're basically, you really do need Driscoll to be ready, find a way, hopefully come back within these next 10 days and come back and start the right tackle because he needs the extra time to go ahead and do this. Because if not, he's becoming what Jason Peters used to be when he's on there for a few plays and he comes back out. And that's nothing against Lane Johnson because he gutted that out. That was just that was a gutsy performance with everything he had going on, but he just needs to rest on there as well too. Now I want to flip it over to the defensive line. I mean, what did you think of their performance last night again? And did you think they got enough pressure on Daniel Jones?
So, I thought look, I thought they really stepped up. I think Brandon Graham's having a hell of a season. He's got 6 sacks through 7 games. He had the strip sack to clinch the game. He was regularly forcing pressure. Fletcher Cox had 2 really good run stops. I thought that Derek Barnett did a nice job. I thought Josh Sweat had some moments as well. Look, I think this defensive line's obviously the strength of this team, and I mean, going up against a weak offensive line, I think that helped too. What about you? What says you?
Well, I think when you look at the way some of his other castmates did, as such as I think Sweat had another good game, got a forced fumble again. Josh Sweat did, and I think Brandon Graham is, like you says, playing at a very high level, and they continue. I think that's infectious, and I think guys kind of get jealous. They say, "Hey, you know what? He's getting a sack. I want to go ahead and join." I think if they continue to go ahead and get that combined performance from that line, I think it'll be okay. And they're going to need. I think the other thing I want to say is they're going to need more out of Javon Hargrave. They really do, because you paid this guy all this money in the offseason. He was your big acquisition, and he hasn't made the impact like you like to see. I mean, Malik Jackson has outplayed him. Fletcher Cox has outplayed him. So I just wish he would go ahead and just find a way to rectify whatever it is. He's had enough games now to get used to playing in his technique, and he's got to find a way to do better while he's on the field.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think he's had his moments, but when you look at kind of the overarching thing, he hasn't been the presence that I thought he would be. I thought he was one of the most underrated signings in the league, and it's one of those things where I think he really needs to kind of get into high gear. Obviously, he didn't have a full training camp. He's learning a new system. He's coming from a 3-4, playing a 4-3. There's an adjustment period, and I think it's shown, and the learning curve's there. But yeah, he needs to step up. Let's talk about the linebackers, because I thought Alex Singleton had a very, very good game. They're using him a lot more. They had him a lot as a blitzer. It seemed like the Jim Schwartz blitzed a lot more than he typically does, for better or worse. Alex Singleton absolutely wrecked Devonta Freeman on a blitz during this game. It was incredible. Like, he looked like a Bash Bro from the Mighty Ducks. It was
good reference.
Yeah, he looked good. Duke Riley was whatever, in my opinion. I know you've got your take on him. We'll get to that in a second. Nate Gary had an impressive sack on a blitz. He treated Daniel Jones like every Eagles blogger treats him. And then, look, I mean, with TJ Edwards potentially returning this week, it's looking likely. I think they're going to be in a little bit better shape at linebacker. If I'm Howie Roseman and I'm serious about making a trade at the deadline, I'm really looking into Avery Williamson from the Jets or Neville Hewitt from the Jets. I'm looking into teams doing fire sales and trying to upgrade that linebacker group, because as well as TJ Edwards was playing as a 2-down linebacker, they need better coverage ability here, and it's just like it's not where it's at. I do think Singleton should observe Nate Gary once Edwards comes back, and those guys should be the 2 dudes on the field. That's probably not going to happen. What's your take overall on the linebackers from this game?
I thought they played a lot better than they have in the past so far. I think that was actually probably one of their best performances as a unit itself. I actually thought Gary played decent. I thought he played a solid game when he was in there. I thought he did some good job even in coverage. I thought he made the right reads, and he was active in the run game, and seemed like he was around the ball a lot. So I had no qualms with him. As you mentioned, Singleton had another good game. I think Duke Riley, though, he struggled. I mean, I know Great Pro Football Focus gave him a decent, good grade, but just looking at it, he looked like he was out of position a lot of those times when he came. I single-handedly watched him on one of the Giants drives. I think it was the one in the third quarter. I had to go back and think, but I think he was the one. He was out of position twice. He ran to the wrong hole. He ran to the wrong hole. He didn't fill it, the gap. He got washed inside, and he was also still, once again, the biggest concern was that I had going into the season was being undersized at linebacker. You can't absorb these blocks from these bigger offensive linemen, and he got washed in a lot. And it's good that TJ Edwards is coming back. I have no problems with him whatsoever, but they have to look either internally. I think they should go ahead and look internally more often not more than anything else. But they'd have to look at these outside linebackers because this is by far the weakest position on his team. They need somebody. They need somebody who can basically has not only just the speed to keep up with some of these tight ends, but who would actually go ahead and cover and not be draped all over them with a hand on the side or not running around, flailing around, looking like, oh wow, the guy's on the other side of the field. I think I'll go ahead and cover him right now. They need to look at it, and we know Davion Taylor is still a ways away. Bradley, I think, is more suited for the middle, and with Edwards coming back, is not there. But they have to find something. If it means playing a bit more big nickel, it means having Will Parks play a lot more at the linebacker's position. I'm okay with that. But they have to find a way to get better as a group.
All right, well, let's move on to the secondary, and let's talk about the sore thumb here. Nickel Roby-Coleman had 4 missed tackles, and that wasn't even his most egregious outlook for this game. Daniel Jones had an 80-yard run that should have been a touchdown, but the turf monster got him. On this nice play, if you watch the video, Nickel Roby-Coleman gets blocked vaguely. Like, it's not like it's a good form block by whoever it was. I forgot. I think it was a wide receiver when they're playing outside. And then Nickel Roby-Coleman could put on the Jets. He's a corner. He should be faster than Daniel Jones. But near the 50-yard line, he just kind of slows down at like the play's over. And the effort was just poor. He's been terrible this year to the point where Cravon LeBlanc's starting over him at nickel. It's almost like the Rams knew something here. And I don't know how you come back from this. He shouldn't be playing outside. Avonte Maddox only played 3 snaps. It seemed like he was only there for in case of emergencies. He's probably going to be a full go against the Cowboys is my guess. Where are you at with Nickel Roby-Coleman?
I think that effort, I can see if he was aggressive and he made a mistake, I think our coaches will go ahead and they'll go ahead and give a pass. But yeah, if I'm Jim Schwartz, I'm putting that on blast. That's one of the first things I'm leading with in the film room. You do not go ahead and not give effort no matter what, especially if you're chasing somebody that prevent a touchdown. You don't just lag behind and just look and give up on a play at any cost. And he's been I had high hopes for Nickel Roby-Coleman, but he's been a big disappointment, like a very big disappointment, especially when you think like, hey, you know what? You came in here and you were supposed to be competing for the other outside linebacker spot. And the fact that he's been bad, he's just been bad. And he hasn't been able to cover the slot guys well. And LeBlanc, I have no problem at all with LeBlanc going ahead and taking over and seeing more time with that because he's earned it looks like he's earned the respect of Schwartz a lot more. I mean, I'd rather trust him inside that and be more physical in that than somebody who's just going to give up. I mean, what type of message does it send to his other teammates? I mean, when they see that, if I'm one of the leaders on that defense, I'm coming after him. I mean, now the other thing is, do you do some type of punitive thing, such as like bench him for the first quarter or anything like that? Would you do something like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, and as we kind of get into that, like at this point they need all hands on deck, but I think once you figure out what you have at corner, if Avonte Maddox can go, yeah, Nickel Roby-Coleman's sitting. But as we have to head into a press conference, we're recording Friday morning because we want to get this to you as soon as possible. What are your final thoughts on this game, and where do you think the Eagles can go from here?
I think this could be a really good building block. I mean, you saw these next 3 games, the 3 games became with including the Giants twice and the Cowboys. This was going to tell how the rest of the season was going to go. And I mean, it's a good start right now. I mean, it was not the way you want. It wasn't pretty, but it's a good start for the Eagles. And the biggest thing right now for it is, can they refocus, get healthy enough, and go ahead and refocus back on for this Cowboys game that's going to be another nationally televised game, and that's going to have big implications on this division. So it's going to be very interesting to watch next week.
So, guys, you can make sure, as I said, with Eagles Extra, you'll get news straight to your phone. You'll get Eagles exclusive scoops. You can sign up for Eagles Extra at NJ.com/text. You can download the No Huddle Show podcast wherever podcasts are available. We're going to be back next Thursday for our preview pod. Very excited about that. Very excited to get the prolonged weekend and maybe some sleep. But for Chris, I'm Mike. Thanks for listening to the No Huddle Show podcast.
Acast powers some of the world's best podcasts. Here's a show we recommend.
I'm Sonia Pfeiffer, award-winning journalist and criminal defense attorney.
I'm David Rudolph. I represented Michael Peterson in the murder trial that became the Netflix documentary The Staircase. Abuse of Power is an original podcast that examines the impact of wrongful convictions.
We will reveal the frightening ways in which innocent people can find themselves wrongfully convicted, imprisoned, and even executed. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast recommends.